All right, welcome back. If you thought the foreclosure crisis only affected the 92 million or so families who have already lost or are at risk of losing their homes, think again. We're breaking it down. Take the city of Newark. Out in New Jersey, they have one of the highest violent crime rates in our country. Well, how do they pay for their enforcement? Well, housing values, of course, and they are going to have to lay off 167 police officers after tomorrow. Those layoffs expected to save $9.5 million annually for the city, while potentially putting the public at greater risk for an already violent city. So how could helping homeowners through refinancing or principal reductions, for example, save jobs like those of the police? Well, it's relatively simple. Save the homes, save the property tax payments, save the budget, save the cops, save the firefighters, save the teachers. Simple. So why does the federal government, which has the power to make this happen through principal write-downs, refuse to step in and make the big banks take the cut? Well, that's the same question our next guest is asking. John Taylor is president and CEO of the National Community Reinvestment Coalition. It's a pleasure to make the acquaintance. The stakes could not be higher. It is truly the security, stability of civil society in every community in this country, and yet we continue to be beholden to the banks, including our own government. Have you figured out why?
Well, I'd say a big reason for it is there doesn't seem to be the same commitment to help the average person in this country, the average homeowner, that there was to help the banks and help Wall Street. Ironically, the very people who created this problem, there doesn't seem to be that same kind of commitment to help those who have been victims of this problem. And I think it's a matter of, you know, the public has been hoodwinked, frankly, by a lot of the media, which has
What do you think are some of the key distortions the media is promoting?
Well, the most important is that, you know, all these people were greedy and they bit off more than they can chew. And the only problem with that is there's 15 million American families right now that are about to face foreclosure, about 3.5 to 5 million already who have faced foreclosure, another 11 million in the pipeline. And, you know, you can't take that number of families and think they're all greedy, they all bit off more than they can chew. The only thing that changed, Dylan, in the entire system, the only thing that changed, is there was a time when lenders only made loans to people who could actually afford to pay it back. What a novel idea, that I'm going to loan you money only if I think you can pay it back.
So you're saying the lender was actually responsible for bearing the risk of making a loan?
Oh no, they weren't even responsible for.
No, I'm saying in the old days.
Oh, in the old days, absolutely.
What are you, crazy?
I know, isn't that?
Isn't the whole point of making money in the banks is lending money you don't have, collecting the payment, and giving the risk to the government?
Right.
So that's the American architecture, right?
So in comes Wall Street that says, look, make any loans you want. Look at any of those loans you want. We'll. No documentation,
we all know that.
Balloon payments, whatever you want to do, we'll buy them. You take your fee, we'll get our fee, everybody's happy, except, of course, you got homeowners that should have been told no, or were put in too large a loan, or put in a loan that changed in a way that they really couldn't afford it.
And you created a hyperinflationary housing market, period. So
you were also paying off the appraisers, which was contributing to the hyperinflation.
Chain of fraud anybody's ever seen.
Biggest Ponzi scheme.
I mean, it's as big as it is. Yeah. And so the only way to undo the Ponzi scheme is fraudulent recourse, if it was an actual Ponzi scheme, which they refuse to call this as such because it goes to the political contributions of the president and all the Congress and everybody else. I mean, for God's sakes, the president took nearly $1 million from Goldman Sachs, so they're not about to go after any of these people. Does the government even have the leverage, though?
Oh, they absolutely have the leverage.
To demand the principal right.
They absolutely do. Look, the government's the only game in town when it comes to securitization. If you don't get an FHA, a VA, or a Fannie and Freddie loan,
but just for folks that may not understand, basically, if the government's not willing to subsidize your lending book
to guarantee
your loans,
you're not going to make loans.
So basically, I'm paying myself to make government-guaranteed loans. The stupid taxpayers takes it in the gut, and whatever I make, I keep.
Yeah,
it's a good business.
It is. But because they do control that, they have the ability to say to the services, to the banks, to all the people who hold these mortgages, modify them. Write down the principle. Write down the principle. It's really in the interest of the government. It's in the interest of the public to do this. Right. We're not going to make any more guarantees with you. We're not going to do any more business with you if you aren't willing to cooperate and try to see to it that a lot of these mortgages become sustainable mortgages.
What about those who would argue if you pull the guarantees and demand the principal write-downs?
Yeah.
which are good for every pension manager, every retiree, I should say, has a pension, every homeowner, economic activity, the civil society, basically anybody who's not a giant bank or China. But if you're a giant bank or China, in this case a giant bank we'll stick with, if I do these write-downs, I will annihilate those banks because they are carrying the second loans, the home equity lines, and the additional mortgages, the second liens, at 80 or 90 cents on the dollar.
Yeah.
And if I write down those mortgages, you know, that makes that worth zero.
Yeah.
And that makes Bank of America, Wells Fargo. So if you do principal write-downs, don't you have to do a total overhaul of the American banking system?
Well, no, but the
big banks go away, right?
The second mortgages and those who are holding second liens, that also needs to be written down.
But that's all the big banks. I mean, I do that at the big banks. The big banks are gone.
No, the big banks aren't gone. They won't disappear. I'll tell you how the big banks are going to disappear if we have another 11 million foreclosures. In fact, our economy is going to disappear. I mean, the impact already, Dylan, has been of 3.5 million foreclosures. That's what we've had over the past several years. They're now looking at 11 million more foreclosure filings. The impact that that's going to have on our economy.
When you look at the obvious aspect of having to deal with this, the principal write-down, it's the only reasonable way to deal with it. Because
well, you can go.
Why do you think the government? Do they not understand this?
I don't think they do. I really don't think they do, because I've been working on this now since Paulson was Treasury Secretary and under Bush and through the current administration. I think they always thought that if they just used the bully pulpit and they talked nice and even gave out rewards in the form of fees and whatever, that the banks and the services of these loans would all come together, would sing Kumbaya together, would fix all these loans, and everybody would go home happy, except nobody's really happy. And even the folks within the administration couldn't possibly be happy with what's happened so far. But
the amount of money they're making here in New York City on Wall Street will blow your mind.
They're doing well.
That's great. I got to tell you, as a local real estate owner, to be in the city where they're stealing all the money, we got nice parks.
Can I say one more thing?
One more quickly. I'm being sarcastic.
It's really in the interest of all American taxpayers to prevent these things from going into foreclosure, and those families who are still working to get a sensible loan, which is what they should have gotten in the first place. Principal write-downs is what's going to get us there, and it's a lot cheaper for everybody if we do that now rather than looking at foreclosure and having tremendous
And it's another
losses.
economic stimulus. Ultimately, it puts more money on Main Street, more cops, more teachers, and more investment. It's a pleasure to talk to you, John. Thank you very much. John Taylor. Again, the National Community and Reinvestment Coalition. Check it out if you haven't.